morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Vision Stage. Let's start from the title of this conversation. Today we're going to talk about planning, designing, and this means making choices that have an impact on the future. We're going to talk about eco-design, which is not just something related to the environment, but rather a strategic approach vis-à-vis innovation and value for the company, added value. Today's conversation stems from the experience of last year's Mito, from the conversation with the participants, with Anna Zandanel. We decided to go into the details of eco-design applied to eyewear design. So we will need you because this conversation is going to be extremely dynamic. We would like you to ask questions. You can do it in real time through Mentimeter. The goal is to establish a dialogue starting from your own experience and your own priorities. Material choices, design decisions will be at the core of the conversation with a focus on added value creations. So we have three participants: Luca Casarotto, design professor at the University of Venice. He will talk about design processes and the relationship between design and industrial processes. Please take your seat. Then we have Anna Pellizzari, Head of Advisory and of Materially. She will talk about sustainable materials as an instrument for innovation, as a means for innovation. And Anna Zandanel, Consultant and Sustainability Professor, who will moderate the dialogue and we'll talk about eco-design as a design method aiming at value generation. Thank you for being here with us. It is a hot topic, because we're talking about designing, but looking into the future in order to make decisions that have an impact through time. Anna, I'd like to hand over to you right now. Remember, we have to involve the audience because we want to make the following hour as interactive as possible. Thank you, Simone. Good morning. Also on my side, as we did last year, let's check now who is present here today, both online and here in the room. So that's the QR code, and please keep a multimeter open when you scan the QR code so that when you go through the slides we can be quicker. So if you have all scanned the QR code, we can move on. Again, we would like to know the category you belong to. We want to know whether you are material manufacturers, eyewear producers. Thank you very much. Let's go to Multimeter. So we have students, designers, opticians, material manufacturers, producers, brands. Lens manufacturers. All right, so there are 38 people who have answered so far. Please reply to the survey. Well, like last year, we have a very heterogeneous audience, and that's good news because we can go through very different topics throughout the eyewear value chain. All right, so thank you very much. And now let's go back to the presentation, please. Anna, so can we start with a question, which is actually the leitmotif of this conversation? We're going to talk about eco-design, as I said. When and how does it become a value for eyewear design companies? That's the very challenge that we have today. We have to make sure that eco-design is not just a parameter to comply with, it should also become an economic value for the eyewear companies. And to explain this, I'd like you to Think as if you were going into an optics store in 5 years' time. There will be glasses on the shelves. You will buy a pair of glasses, but each pair of glass will have a story to tell. And in that code, there will be the story of how it was designed, but also where, when, with which materials, the story of these materials. This is not a science fiction. It's basically the transposition of the eco-design regulations that were approved in 2024. There are three main pillars here. All the products that will be marketed in the European Union shall be designed with specific eco-design principles that will be specified, except for some drugs. Second pillar, and this is something that we continuously hear, the digital product passport. And this is the vehicle of the story that we will have to tell. The third parameter is the ban to destroy the unsold items. For the time being, this applies to apparel only, but it will be extended to eyewear as well. In my next 10 minutes, I will go through three concepts. First of all, I would like to explain what eco-design is and why it is not just a principle to comply with, but also strategy. Second element, transparency, will become the new way of communicating with customers, and it will be an added value. And then thirdly, I will give you some recommendations per each individual category in order to foster circularity in the business. So eco-design is a regulation from 2024. However, the designing of eco-design goes back many years ago. We do not have yet the rules of the European Union that will specify how to design. However, eco-design is based on these factors: durability, updatability, recyclability, repairability, material, environmentally aware material, low impact processes. All these factors lay the foundations of eco-design. Eco-design has existed for a long time. This is a chair from 1859. It was designed by Michael Tonnet, and its name is Tonnet number 14 because it is made up of 14 pieces. Well, we still remember this chair in our grandma's house, yes, and also in many pizzerias. It's everywhere because this design has become evergreen. Tonnet did not only invent the method to curve wood, but he also developed an innovation. With this design, he managed to ship 36 chairs in 1 cubic meter back in 1859. He was a pioneer in the for foldable concept, so we can optimize deliveries with a smart design. However, eco-design is not only a vintage old principle. This is a Nike project dating back to 2023. It is a shoe based on circular design. It can be disassembled. There's no glue, there are no connections. All the bits and pieces of the shoe can be disassembled, and it's a one-off on the market. Research then leads to new products, of course. The idea behind this shoe is to change the components, to repair it, to update it. This can also apply to eyewear. This is a dissertation of a student of mine, Lidia Zanari. She graduated at LABA too, and this is her dissertation. Lisa designed a next number of frames with a next number of temples that can be assembled together. So you can generate a next number of designs, so the product gets updated multiple times. Well, this is a girl aged 20 years, so people with much higher, much greater know-how can design something even more sophisticated. Good news is that this is not just theory, because sustainability is successfully on the market too. In last year's presentation, we said sustainability is not the first parameter of choice. However, we should say something more. So it is not a priority because we miss a communication element. In France, the repairability index came into force in 2025. So if you have your household appliance be repaired, you have the efficiency label and the repairability index saying whether the appliance can be repaired at a low cost, and there are the components that listed that can be repaired. According to the research study that was carried out last year, 90% of French consumers think this information is important, and 40% choose the products based on the repairability index. But this was well known because 10 years ago we knew that a product communicating its durability had 3 times more possibility of being chosen, and those communicating the repairability had 2 times more possibilities to be bought. And when the product communicates both durability and repairability, well, consumers are much more ready to buy this product. Well, clearly, this data has to be measured and real. This is not greenwashing. And let's come now to my second chapter, communication and transparency. The digital product passport can be perceived as a cost or can be perceived as an opportunity that can become a sales opportunity. I recommend that you choose this second option. Through a series of solutions, you can actually tell a story. This is a Pandaya t-shirt with a QR code on the label, and you can track the whole story of the t-shirt. Or, well, it's not a closed project, but we have also some open projects. Well, with this MFC tag, TOTS allows consumers to read the story of the product, and to also have the authentication. And so there are commercial initiatives that can be designed and developed based on that strategy. So you can focus on the customer loyalty, you can do upselling, cross-selling, and so on and so forth. Luxottica too introduced the NFC tag on the end piece of some of their products in December 2025. Then in the digital project passport, you can include the information that you want besides the information provided for by law. Let's now come to a couple of recommendations. I will share a couple of recommendations for each individual category. For opticians, well, first, since last year, in the Mentimeter survey, we realized that many opticians were not aware of having sustainable products in their stores. And, well, for the time being, it's almost impossible. So it's unbelievable. What is missing, I think, is communication. So please choose a brand which is clearly sustainable so that you can check what storytelling they are offering. Second recommendation, and I anticipate a little bit the regulations on eco-design and repairability. Well, in the multi-channel era, online is much quicker than a store. So please try and strengthen the repairability service for glasses beyond the guarantee in order to increase the customer loyalty. You're just ahead of time, so you anticipate the regulations, and by doing so you can increase your competitiveness. To material manufacturers, you should become the sales argument, the sales topic for your customers. Also, recycling is important. Anna will go into the details of that. And your storytelling is very important as a driver for sale. The material is an integral part of the glasses, and so if you develop a material that is durable, or that resists specific damages would be helpful. Finally, a recommendation for brands and producers. Please measure once and tell 100 times. So transparency, authenticity is key. Whatever you tell customers, this has to be measured and true. So through the digital product passport, you can reach your customers, but you can also train your opticians to do so. And then please design keeping the digital product passport in mind. You may start with one single pair of glasses, but you have to start from the end. What do I want to achieve with the digital product passport? Do I want to have a repairable pair of glasses that can be recycled, that is interchangeable, that can be updated? With the design, with these hints, you can give inspiration to the designer so that he or she designs a couple of products having the digital product passport in mind. And with that, so I can close my 10-minute long presentation. So transparency and communication are the two keywords. And also long-sightedness is very important. So a visionary approach. Yes, eco-design should be like that and should be perceived as an opportunity, not as a limitation or as a cost, because it is a chance. Let's now hand over to the audience. And now a second question for you. Please take your smartphone and answer the question. If you could redesign a product with eco-design as the absolute priority, where would you start? Well, it's not a trivial question on Monday morning at 11:20. No, it is not. So if you can please show the Mentimeter screen. Do we have some options? Yes, so durability of the product, including repairability, updatability of the product, traceability, improvement of the manufacturing processes, choice of the materials, and end-of-life management. Can I also choose? Yes. Well, I would choose choice of the materials and management of the end-of-life process. But I do not want to influence anyone. We are among friends here. Well, unfortunately, you influenced the audience. I'm an influencer now. So traceability, well, nobody wants it because it's expensive, you know. But I think it will become a must as well. Also, product durability, including the repairability, updatability. This is something I like very much because you can have a lot of fun from a creative viewpoint. Right, so I would say choice of the materials and product durability are those with the highest number of answers. So I think we have the final results of our survey. Well, these answers, by the way, comply with the general sentiment. However, on traceability, we have to focus a little bit more. We will have to raise awareness a little bit on the importance of traceability. Yes, let's now move to Anna Pellizzari. Good morning. Well, I have a great responsibility now. Well, let's talk about sustainable materials now. But, well, you know, sometimes we have the impression that they are perceived as a limitation. They should become a lever for innovation instead. And this is what I said in my introductory remarks. A driver for innovation for companies. Is it true? So sustainable materials, are they a limitation or a strategic lever?
Nice question. It's obvious that it's a two-faced answer in a way. As the choice for sustainable materials, it's mandatory, then, just like Anna said, we should use it as a strategic lever. Today, I have three examples from three worlds, material, innovation connected to sustainability. In 10 minutes, we cannot say a lot. And the three worlds have to do with what you imagine. Use of renewable sources, then recycling, and then third, working on processes that was mistreated. But I believe that Luca will have interesting things to say about it. First of all, the use of renewables not based on oil. It's obvious in eyewear. The sector of eyewear is based on cellulose acetate. And improvements are applied to synthesis of cellulose to reduce its impact upstream, and then other family of bio-based materials coming from plants. They are used. They've been used. And in this sector, the most significant theme is traceability, and that is to say the origin of feedstock. Where does it come from? How was this bio-based material produced? Does it contain bio-based raw material, for example, that can be identified through carbon-14 processes, or should be certified through a process of certification of the overall supply chain? So, apart from such worlds, which are quite traditional in the world of eyewear, having their own complexities, I have identified three interesting realms. The objectives of the use of bio-based raw materials and reduction in the use of raw materials of fossil origin, reduction in the carbon footprint, and third, exploration of new aesthetics. In terms of exploration of new aesthetics, the world of cellulose, there are various startup companies that are working on the use of cellulose as a raw material to generate colors, structural colors, traditional property of cellulose molecules that can reflect light in a special way, creating an iridescent effect. Cellulose has this natural property, and various startup companies are developing color ranges that at the moment can be applied. It's print ink. You can see it on the top left. But the technological level is not so high at the moment, but also paints, with the objective of creating master batches to mold plastics. White specifically is interesting because it replaces titanium dioxide. It's a material with certain problems, and specifically in the case of paint, and it's a very interesting sector. Another interesting sector connected to bio-based segment in the eyewear, it's the use of waste of various kinds to create special aesthetics and finishes, mechanical resistance at the world of fillers, additives, using natural fibers, agricultural waste, but also mineral fibers. On the left, you see an example of a material produced by Japanese companies that establishes partnerships with various entities to use waste cellulose and also specific fibers elements that can be visible in the product. On the right-hand side, we speak about calcium carbonate. It's a typical filler for plastics, but of organic origin. It comes from shells and seashells and shells of eggs. Typical calcium carbonate example, it creates a very soft, velvety touch. Then you have the world of biochar, vegetable carbon, let's be simple, replacing carbon black. And here you have various examples. So you have packaging and 3D printed material. It's carbon sink. It keeps atmospheric carbon absorbed by the plant. It's a way to reduce the carbon footprint of the product itself. An example, this company produces sports items, and they have created a brand called Sink, a collection of items where they use this additive for various purposes, and the objective is to reduce the carbon footprint of the product and also communicate it. Second, world recycling, and also in this case we have almost everything. Here we speak about reduction in waste and industrial symbiosis. Post-consumption, we do not deal with it. It's complex setting up of chains or take back projects for eyewear. It's quite chaotic. However, and how all of this can be connected to communications projects. Some examples, collaboration-based projects, and by collaboration I mean entities that get corporate waste and process them into other raw materials. In this case, it's a French company that uses leather waste to then create accessories for the fashion world. Here you see an example of an Italian startup that recycles mixed textiles, which are quite difficult to be recycled, the world of acetate, cigarette butts, and cellulose. And it's a post-industrial phase, and there are entities that reprocess this raw material to create pellets and insulating materials for other sectors, and to enter this interesting project that dates back to some years ago. And there was a real collaboration in the fashion sector, starting from yarn scrap that was then reused to produce paper, and then it was reused in packaging in the same company that initially produced and offered the initial waste. Last world, very quickly, what we define as new industrial order. It's a new way of doing things, and it has to do with certain processes where you also have product tracing and a reduction in manufacturing steps. Luca will go into details of this theme, simplification of matter and optimization of resources and product tracing. One of the interesting sectors for the simplification of the various processes to finish plastics. Everybody tries to create beautiful plastics and not applying special paints to plastics and strange things. There's a set of companies that are developing surface texturization of molds, and it allows you to create surface effects, iridescent touches, and different type of touch. And you don't have to add surface finishes, but you obtain a product that in itself has already interesting properties visually, but also in terms of touch. 3D printing examples, a company that does such small things with a high level of finish, and The process is called solography. They're carrying out a project with Swarovski to produce crystals with 3D printing, metal manufacturing, 3D printing, and the possibility to create a quite big series, not just a typical prototype. With the same quality, you create a prototype in 1,000, 2,000 pieces, end-to-end tracing systems that can be embedded inside plastics coating or sprayed onto the product, and hence you can in a way follow product through markers. Markers that are used for tracing purposes because such markers contain information, but also for
La parola, quindi diciamo ci sono diversi
a forgery. And there are various additives that are included into the material, and that the product brings with itself from the beginning to the end. I am through. I hope I haven't tired too much. And counterfeiting, it's quite recurrent in eyewear. We have a question from the audience, and which difficulty do you identify in identifying sustainable materials?
Vado?
Possiamo forse passare a Mentimettersi perché mi pare che tutti abbiano...
ecco
Ok,
qua.
puoi andare avanti?
Devo andare avanti
Sì.
così?
Voilà.
Ok.
Così vediamo anche le...
So we also see the various options. We have price, technical features which are not enough, problems identified during manufacturing, and it's of no interest to brands.
Tutti lanciati velocissimi. Il prezzo.
Ma sfattiamo questa cosa che non è sempre così.
Che cosa, il prezzo?
Che è sempre.
Diciamo che c'è un tema di prezzo della materia prima, ma io non so veramente quanto incida il costo della materia prima sull'occhio.
So, what's the impact of the raw material on the finished product? Yeah, the result is blatant. We know it. That's the general thought. The price, the cost is the main obstacle. And we have to transform it into a value. I'd like to know if it's some sort of prejudgment or request for quotations were submitted because it might make the difference. Materials, basically, premium materials are more expensive. It's a question of scale, of course. But it's also true that you have an overall reduction. There's a theme of scale. There was also a moment in which recycled plastics was considered to be more stable than oil-based plastics when the price of oil was skyrocketing. Recycled plastics was stable. Bio-based plastics is more expensive. Thank you so much, Anna. Now Luca Casarotto, a question for you. And then you will give us additional hints to keep on with our conversation. We speak about processes and companies, and how many of such processes are going toward sustainable direction, and is there something applied in it? I'd like to start my contribution by trying to review a process that occurs in the life cycle of eyewear. You have design, then manufacturing, and usually here it is represented as something bigger, but it's even bigger in real life than selling and use of products, and also then end of life. Why do I want to start from this scheme? Because I have data from September 2025 saying that 90% of the production, this is to say 2.8 billion euros, I mean eyewear, made in Italy eyewear is exported. And 2.8 billions, more than 2.8, it's 3 billions. It's designing and manufacturing in Italy. Why do I start from this figure? Because from studies in the world of eyewear, but also in manufacturing processes, we have understood that the design phase is 5% of the final cost of the product. So a small part, that is to say, designing 5%, it determines more than 70% of all the costs that will be borne in all the subsequent phases. If you think about it, if we decide to manufacture a product with a specific type of material, we're making choices that have an impact on manufacturing, for example, having that type of material, processing it, and the way we sell it, use of it, and especially end of life. But how can we make specific design choices? On the one hand, you have the theme of big data and all the information that we can collect during such phases of the process of the life of the eyewear manufacturing by optimizing manufacturing on the basis of data obtained, then selling and use. Please do consider that, yes, we have data of sales of eyewear, but especially with smart glasses, we will start having other information on eyewear. For example, where people rest eyewear and data collected by eyewear themselves, and then end of life. And in the case of eyewear, smart glasses will bring about big changes, especially in terms of end of life, because you have materials that were not typically used, small parts of the eyewear itself. And data are based on the 5 V's of big data. They should have volume, quite big volume to be processed. And you should also have speed in processing, velocity in processing them, variety to make comparisons between the different data put together, and truthfulness, veridicità in Italian, and value. Why do I speak about data? Because when you use artificial intelligence, using artificial intelligence in many processes, artificial intelligence works through data. If we don't have information that can be quantified in terms of numbers and information, we cannot process this type of info.
Nello specifico mi piaceva raccontarvi anche questo progetto.
This is another project that we developed together with the University of Venice. It is a research project. We had a group working on the sustainability balance sheet, and so we worked based on the numbers of the sustainability balance to develop frames or glass components based on the data collected by the company. And this was an interesting process because also within the company, people started realizing that some information was not accessible to everyone. Afterwards, we started a process involving the different departments of the company that started working together. And through this cooperation, we identified some issues, for example, in the production process, in the finishing process, that were not clearly visible through data. However, these issues and problems became evident when people told about what they did during their daily business. And this leads me to another type of data, the thick data.
Qualitativo, quindi non quantitativo, e che negli ultimi anni
It is qualitative data rather than quantitative data, and thick data is becoming increasingly important together with big data. So the information that we can collect is not enough to design better products. Well, large companies have started working on thick data, as a matter of fact. Let me mention a couple of examples. IKEA, for example. IKEA realized by analyzing some living situations of their customers, well, IKEA realized that their customers not only bought furniture from them, but they adapted it to the different use cases. I don't know, they used a bathroom cabinet in the bedroom, for example, because it was more convenient. So data is not only should not only be considered from the viewpoint of the number of items bought, but also based on the use that customers do of the products. And that's why if you go to IKEA, you may find in some departments products that may have nothing to do with that department, but this is simply to stimulate consumers. Nike, for example, realized that for longer distances, athletes preferred to have heavier shoes, but with a more comfortable sole. So the idea was to reduce the performance of the shoe because the weight was higher. However, through the more comfortable sole, athletes could run longer distances without straining their back, for example, or the feet. This is Stranger Things. Netflix realized after the release of the first series that actually it was not the popularity of that movie, but simply because it reminded of the 80s. And so in the following series, they strengthened this reminiscence of the 80s, and they increased the references to the 80s and 90s, and they also adapted the plot accordingly. As I said, so we also have thick data. And please note that thick data will become fundamental, especially in the sale and use of a product. So smart glasses, for example, are to be considered accordingly. A second element that influences the sustainable design is, besides production, the end of life of a product. So the waste, the scraps that are generated in the production, in the sale, and in the end of life can be actually reused. Well, if we think about it, during the manufacturing process, We have a huge amount of scraps. We also have consumption materials. So the materials that are used for the different processings or materials that can be recycled, such as water, for example, and then waste materials. But as I said before, we will also have new materials that can be used for repair, for substitution, and we have to understand how they can be reused after the end of life. These are some examples of projects carried out by our students at the UAV University in Venice. They also collaborated with companies and they tried to understand how these materials can be reused after the end of life of a product. For example, glasses are made up of smaller items, smaller components, so that they can be easily assembled, or materials can be merged or melt down and recreated. Or this is Zamac, for example, that can be reused for manufacturing screwdrivers, for example, or well, some of the components were also transformed into pencils or pens, but this applies also to other contexts. You can, for example, use the granules for maracas or for games by using elements in a different way. So again, in the design phase, you can already start thinking about how to reuse waste at this stage. Please note that 80% of environmental impact is the consequence of the decisions that we make when we design products. So pay attention to the decisions that you make during the design phase. Both designers and companies should choose what products to privilege compared to others, because as we said before, it's the 5% of the products that cause 70 to 80% of waste. And considering that we also have the end of life of a product, we have materials and objects that can be recycled and reused. This is my question for you. So please scan the QR code for the last but one time. So in which aspect would you invest to reduce the environmental impact of your company? These are the options. So big data. So mostly on data, especially for optimizing manufacturing processes. Then thick data, so qualitative data, as we said, or on both to increase the durability and repairability of the product. So durability, thinking about the end of life. Well, the combination is the one with the highest score. But there is someone who makes up his mind. Well, big data is losing, again, traceability or quantitative data is more fearful, or it seems to be more automatic, and it is also more expensive to track. I think we have a clear winner here. So increasing durability and repairability of products. This is, by the way, what we saw in the beginning from a commercial viewpoint. So the audience here in the room is very consistent. But we have one final question, because Anna, you have the floor now. We want to look ahead, and we also wanted to hear from you about the needs in the future. Like last year, we would like to ask you which sustainability topics you would like to hear about in the next Mido edition, so that we can go into the details of the items or the needs that you want to hear about. It's an open question, no limitations. Well, what I liked was Stranger Things. I think many of you watched Stranger Things. Well, by the way, the lights used in the series are not so environmentally friendly, but this was very interesting. So also TV companies, a giant like Netflix, consider sustainability. Yes, Netflix was somehow a pioneer. Well, they started with big data and they realized that most of the users liked watching multiple episodes of the same series, and that's why they decided to release multiple episodes of the same series at once. And well, from season 2 onwards, they also worked a lot on qualitative aspects and not only on quantitative ones. All right, so we have different answers. If you can scroll down so that we can Stranger Things, you wrote it. Maybe. We have some real examples from the sector, so circular economy, reuse of the scraps, of waste, cost analysis, reuse of recyclable materials, bio-based, recycled materials. Well, again, recycled materials is a hot topic here. Well, real examples from the industry. It's difficult. Well, this is what you should start writing. That's your challenge because things are changing right now. And so we see great and big revolutions at a small scale, but it is at the small scale that you can be creative and you can trigger new things, new developments. Well, I also like the fact of raising awareness among customers. Customer communication is something that I read. Then I see lenses. So again, lenses have become important again. Materials over and over again because, well, that's clearly a beautiful thing to talk about. And then circular economy and recycling. Don't be shy, please write. We take your recommendations into consideration, of course. So this will be good for next year. And please write down what you would like to improve. Brands, companies. There are already companies doing very interesting things, but it wouldn't be fair to mention just one company. Yes, it depends on the context. So while I was coming here, I saw very nice things. And when something becomes established, then this becomes widespread, but being the first, well, certainly helps. All right, very good. Good. So I think, well, we've mentioned what we wanted to say. Thank you for the very open and transparent conversation. I don't know if you have some questions. We have 1 minute to go, but I think you said everything you wanted to say through the smartphone. That's much easier. Well, the take-home message today is that the eco-design is not a formula, but rather a concrete reality based on experience, on dialogue, and on exchange of views. Thank you, Anna, thank you, Luca, and thank you to the audience for participating in the conversation. Thank you, and see you next year with Anna Zandanelli. Thank you, bye-bye.